I'm too nostalgic, I'll admit it.
We graduated 4 months ago. What can you possibly be nostalgic for?
I'm nostalgic for conversations I had yesterday. I've begun reminiscing events before they even occur. I'm reminiscing this right now. I can't go to the bar because I've already looked back in it in my memory, and I didn't have a good time.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. It's time to do another comic book retrospective. We're going back into the just one of the best ages that you're ever going to find in Marvel Comics. We're going to the Daredevil run by Frank Miller and Klaus Janson. Also, I believe it's edited by Denny O'Neil. So you have not just a superstar creative team, like we're talking super duper star creative team. You think about the editor. Obviously, here with us to talk about that is award-winning comic book editor, writer Joe Corallo. How you doing, Joe?
I'm all right, Wes. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. We've also got with us comic book super fan, the voice of the voiceless, the man so cool they called the breed, the comic book hoarder himself, Eric Breen. How you doing?
Try not to have all the books I hoarded over the weekend fall on me.
Well, it's con season. You went out there. You got some good books. Hopefully you got some good deals. Didn't lose out on those deals. Did you get any Daredevil? That's the question.
I did not.
Wow, so you're missing out. This is fantastic. So this is essentially the return of the Kingpin. He's gone away before this happens. He's enticed back into New York City, and in return is one of the foils of Daredevil. We'll also get a big helping of Bullseye in Daredevil 170 through 172. Frank Miller writing, also penciling. We've got Klaus Janson inking. This comes out from May 1981 through July 1981. I believe before this, it was like a bi-monthly book. It came out every 2 months, and it would finally return to monthly status as Frank Miller had elevated the character with his wonderful work. Obviously, I personally think, while I do love a lot of what Frank Miller did with Batman, I think his Daredevil work is even better, Joe.
Yeah, no, I mean, he certainly laid a lot of the groundwork here at Marvel with Daredevil. And there's some things like, people point out there's parallels between, Born Again and Year One and things like that. A lot of the early renditions of those ideas are all here in the pages of Daredevil.
Not surprisingly, recently I've heard Batman fans tell me that Daredevil over at Marvel from Chip Zdarsky is the best Batman comic book out on the market. So now that I think about it, I agree.
Probably is.
So, Eric, what is it about Frank Miller's writing style and the character of Daredevil, who, at his core, he's a devout Catholic, but Frank Miller's not exactly a nice writer. He puts him through the ringer, but he always kind of overcomes it. Do you think that just fits in with the character, or do you think Frank Miller kind of built that up for him?
Well, first, we have to give some credit to Roger McKenzie, because that's who Frank was drawing the series for the first 8 to 10 issues before he got full control with issue 168. And he kept a lot of the ideas, like the tone that was set by Roger. And it was a total departure from what he had been up to this point. He'd always kind of been a swashbuckler, kind of happy-go-lucky more than not. And Frank, Roger and Frank just made him a serious street level, badass, for lack of a better term, which he'd always been. But this was a more grounded Daredevil, more gritty and urban. And it was something that, I don't know that anybody had really thought to do before that, but it worked, because we're going to talk about this. This character just, took off during his run.
And you're absolutely going to see why when we go through this comic book retrospective. Obviously, this comes out May 1981 to July 1981. Joe, is there anything big popping in comic books, or is this the only thing hot? Only thing worth knowing about?
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going. I mean, this is, early 80s. We've got, let me think. I mean, we got Roger Stern started, he was a good chunk into his Spectacular Spider-Man run, almost to Amazing Spider-Man. Still, I think he starts that like closer to the end of the year. But John Romita Jr. is already on the title with Denny at this time. because this is like the high two teens, like 217, 218, around there. You've also got, there's a few examples right around here of artists who are already on books that they're known for, but the writer isn't the artist they're known for.
They haven't arrived yet.
Because like, Marv Wolfman's on Green Lantern with Joe Staton, and the pairing everyone talks about is Steve Englehart and Joe Staton. So you've got that going on over at DC. But when you're going through, I mean, this is a time where Jerry Conway is writing like every other book at DC. I'm only being a little hyperbolic here. He's considered like the fastest writer at DC according to Paul Levitz at this time. So he's on Legion of Superheroes, Wonder Woman, Justice League. He's about to take over Batman. He's already on Detective. Like it's a lot. And you have Carrie Bates at this time is still dominating the Superman line. He's still got Flash, and then he's doing Superman, Superboy, a bunch of that other stuff. They had to relaunch Superboy little over a year before this because he got kicked out of his own book from Legion of Superheroes.
Legion of Superheroes, they kicked him out, huh?
He kicked him out of his own book. So so he could do that. But we're a good way into Teen Titans. I think this is around issues like 8, 9, 10 or 7, 8, 9 in that area. And 9 is one of my favorite covers from that run where they're all like marionette dolls and they're all hanging. Mm-hmm. And that was the return of Deathstroke the Terminator in that issue. So that's a good one. It's got one of my favorite covers on Legion of Superheroes. 276 is the Rich Buckler cover where it's like Princess Projectra in front of the castle holding her arm up and the lightning's coming down, striking in around like other members of the team. Like it's good stuff, but Marvel also has a few other decent things going on now too, of course. I mean, that's the other one I was thinking of. Mike Zeck is on Cap, but it would be a few more issues before J.M. DeMatteis or DeMatteis joins the book, because this is during that time of there's a bit of trying to figure out what to do with the book, because this is when Roger Stern and John Byrne had abruptly left because they were basically told they couldn't do stories that were longer than 2 issues, and they had this I think it was at least 3 issue idea to bring Red Skull back, but they couldn't do it, so they walked from the book. So that's how we get Mike Zeck, and then some rotating writers before it settles in on J.M. DeMatteis. But Roger Stern's on Doctor Strange at this point too. Bill Mantlo is on the Hulk. We're in like the 260s at this point. So yeah, it's a lot of good interesting things going on. Yeah,
Marvel's about to take over. Obviously, we probably got Uncanny X-Men going pretty well by now.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
What's interesting, Breen, is I read this. When I've read a lot of Frank Miller comics, I happen to like him a lot. I if I want to go dark, I want to go Frank. Like I think he's the best one to kind of take the dark stuff. But later on, his humor, when it's definitely evident in his further comics past this, but his humor gets a lot darker, and sometimes it's like almost not funny. It's like I get it, that's the joke, but I don't want to laugh. In this one, the humor is a lot more like accessible. Like, there's like a running gag with this window, and there's a villain. Well, he's not really a villain. He's like a thug. His name's Turk. He's always talking about crap on Daredevil. Whenever he does it, Daredevil's standing right behind him. And I like the humor in this better, even though it's it's not the darker humor that you see later on in Frank. I kind of enjoyed it better.
You mentioned Turk, who is probably when we talk about who are the best known supporting characters of books, he's probably the best known random thug in Marvel history because he actually lasted. He was like, I'm sure there was a rule there that says, you can kill the guys next to him, but you leave Turk alone because he's that little bit of levity in a title that doesn't usually lend itself to one or to it. And I mean, he actually made it into the Daredevil Netflix series because that's how well known he is. And you're right, the window gag and just and there was other light touches, even from Bullseye in this storyline. So yeah, this just the right amount of levity with a super serious plot. Even Foggy has a half of a one-liner or two, but this is.
I like it better, Joe.
No.
I just think it feels better. It's like more enjoyable.
No, for sure. And then before I jump into that, I also forgot to mention this is when Bill Sienkiewicz is doing Fantastic Four during that brief period of time in between Byrne leaving as the artist and then coming back to be the writer artist. So it's during that time, and then I double checked what was going on in X-Men because I knew this is after Days of Future Past, but before some more of the bigger things that happen in the book. But we do get a return appearance from Arcade in 146, which I know is
my favorite villain.
Yeah, so you might have to check that out. Yeah, but
I've read that one. I've read that. I've been all the way up, definitely through those. That's a good character.
But yeah, the one of my favorite running gags in these issues is breaking the front glass window in Josie's.
Yeah, this is great.
Which happens, I think, every issue in these three in a row.
Until the third one, where he's going to jump out himself,
and he wraps him around.
The Daredevil stops him because she's like, "Not my window." It's like, I could do that. This is great.
That was it was so good. But yeah, it's as you're just going through this, I mean, just like issue 170 here, him running up the bridge and everything, it's the perspective and how Frank deals with all that and the tall panels. It's so good.
Yeah, we definitely see that a lot throughout, where you have like this one long, thin panel on the left side of your image showing you kind of where they are in the building and giving some information about their location in the city. It's pretty interesting. Obviously, Frank Miller is a wonderful artist, so he's going to do some cool visuals. We will start out with Daredevil 170. The Kingpin must die. This thing is magnificent. We were just talking about it here, Braid. Turk, he's at the bar. He's talking crap on Daredevil. It's like, I'll kick his ass as soon as I see him. Unfortunately, Daredevil is right behind him, and as soon as he sees Daredevil, we get the first time of him running away and jumping straight through a window because he's so actually scared of Daredevil himself. It was a great introduction to kind of the setting and Josie's bar and everything, which we see in every single issue here. And then we find out pretty quickly, Breen, that there's a $5 million contract on Kingpin's head, who's actually exited New York City. He's in Japan, having a new life with Vanessa, trying to convince himself and her that he's just a normal guy, that he's not really a villain anymore.
Humble dealer of spices. That which has been used again since then. That's a great introduction. You get what the story is going to be about almost from the beginning, where he says that the gangs that are in charge now want to make sure that he never does come back, so they want to take him out, which is kind of silly because they could have just left him where he was. But I guess they weren't convinced that he wasn't, so they're gonna solve this problem, but they can't figure out a way to get him to come back to New York. So that's the snag.
What's also interesting, Breen, is his right hand man. I think his name is Lynch. He's not convinced either.
Yeah.
All he can think about is, I remember the old days when we were running New York.
What's going on here? He is convinced, and but he keeps waxing nostalgic for the old days. And he starts getting ideas on because I said left his own devices. As far as he knows, Wilson Fisk is just going to be a humble dealer of spices in Japan. And that doesn't sit well with him because, as he says, he goes, I remember when. So, and as we'll find out later, that he's going to factor into this.
I like the idea that Wilson Fisk has decided not only to be a humble spice trader, but he also has decided he's going to be a sumo wrestler in his dojo. He's like sumo wrestling and beating the piss out of everybody.
That's if you've read all the Kingpin stories, that's a common occurrence, or the Kingpin workouts.
Yeah. I just liked it when he was like in the sumo outfit, like he's decided he's embracing the Japanese culture.
But he used to. The only difference is he used to, fight roomfuls of men in his, striped
tidy
suit.
whities.
Yeah. But so he wants to. Like I said, and they also the gags also, should point out is that I guess they've gotten wind of the fact that he plans to turn state's evidence, and they can't have that. So they've got to get him. They've got to take care of him before he can, drop a dime on all of his former lieutenants who have consolidated power in his absence.
Yeah. So what Eric's talking about there is Fisk is actually, and this is, I think, the first time that we learned his name. Before this, he was just Kingpin. I think this is the first time the name Wilson Fisk was ever used in conjunction with the character, that he's making a deal with the U.S. Attorney General to turn files that he's consolidated over the years on all the mob bosses and the lieutenants that work for him, who are now in charge, basically to clean out his record. And for, I think it's $7 million cash. And for this to happen, Joe, they need someone to represent him. So Vanessa, Wilson does not want her to do this. She's going to fly her to New York to hire Nelson and Murdoch to represent their interests in these dealings with the Attorney General, as Fisk is trying to clean his record and basically step away from crime forever.
Yeah.
And this is it does not go well, but it just so happens that she picks the greatest law firm in Hell's Kitchen.
She sure does. And one of the elements here too that's interesting is so much of this is. Again, it's Frank, it's Klaus, it's Glennis Ween doing the colors, it's Denny, but you couldn't imagine, as much as I think everyone here and who will listen to this admire John Romita Sr., you couldn't imagine a goofy roly-poly Kingpin from the Amazing Spider-Man, Silver Age, like that kind of Kingpin in this role. And it's interesting how much the art can really completely transform a character. And Frank does this just seamlessly. And part of the art that he does here on page 6, when Daredevil's jumping down here, does the kick. I mean, the choreography there is great, but you'll also notice most artists wouldn't do this. He does the effect to show Daredevil's hitting the taxi first and then shows the arc through the line work. So what would have been a lot of other panels, potentially, he can tell concisely in just that one panel to get that action in. So I think that's important. And then, we go right into more great action with Vanessa. We get more windows breaking, which is always wonderful. And then, leading right into some great action with the henchman with the fire device there. And then, like you were saying before, with the tall panels, we got a really nice one. It doesn't have a happy ending for that guy, but
no,
very nice
that's
panel.
The one that accidentally burns up the line that Daredevil's using to try and save him, because there's been an assassination attempt basically at Nelson and Murdoch as they're negotiating with Vanessa. And obviously Matt sneaks out. He becomes Daredevil. He tries to take the guy down, and he does not make it, Joe.
No.
Because he accidentally uses like a flamethrower to burn through the rope.
Yeah, he doesn't make it in a very spectacular way.
Yeah, he goes splat.
Yeah, and you notice that Daredevil mentions how he realizes how serious this is, because Bruno, the man that he's fighting, is a retired assassin who was brought out of retirement. to take this job. So they realize how seriously they want the Kingpin. And I do want to clean up one of my own messes when I said if they had just left him in Japan, but I forgot about the part where, he was going to turn state's evidence. I said, I'm still tired from the weekend. So sorry about that gaffe.
No, you're good.
And then we get the final little bit to the story. So they are building the stakes, and you're right, Joe. They're building it up the whole time. They're like, what is going on here? Why are these guys all doing these meetings? This shouldn't be happening. This shouldn't be happening. Clearly something's wrong. And Breen, we see a character being released from the hospital. It turns out Bullseye, they couldn't convict him, and now that he's healed up, they have to let him out. He's immediately picked up by the crime bosses that are opposing Wilson Fisk. Daredevil sees it. He decides he needs to pursue him. And then we see this big fight. It is fantastic. This thing lasts for 4 or 5 pages. It is Daredevil and Bullseye just going at it, toe-to-toe. We end up seeing Bullseye, I believe, throw Daredevil out of a window. He doesn't die. Here's a spoiler. And then we also get the last reveal that Fisk has returned to New York City after he has found out about the kidnapping of Vanessa.
Yeah, Bullseye had been used in a Mackenzie written story, like 161, 162. So he was getting out. He was getting paroled from that. And this is kind of a hint of Frank's writing to come when he mentions basically just how corrupt the system is, because he said he had the best lawyers money can buy. He brought in, credible doctors to quantify that it could have been a brain tumor, and now that it's been operated on, he'll be good. And obviously, that's all BS. He's rotten to the core.
Sure.
And like you said, he is immediately hired. Daredevil, who feels responsible because Daredevil had a chance to let him die in that storyline when he pulled him out off the train tracks. And so, they go out, and I love when he goes, they're fighting, and he goes, if I have to, I will use the whole city to beat you. And the scene where he kicks him out of the window, and the way Daredevil manages to survive, because he uses the billy club, and then Bullseye goes, not going to be that easy, shoots the cord, and he's trying, the flagpole, the gargoyle, cornice, and then the convenient, garbage truck that I guess he really is in good shape, because that's about a 12-story drop before he gets to that. But, comic books. And then, the Kingpin arrives in New York, the setup where they send the dummy plane, and then it explodes on the thugs, and as he arrives safely, and, Lynch just plotting. So that's where
fantastic issue. You can't imagine a better setup for a story. The stakes are there. You've had some levity, and you had some big action, Joe.
Yeah, and that page where he gets kicked out, it's that 2/3 page splash there. That's better than most covers. Oh yeah, that's a cover image right there.
That's reminiscent of the Spider-Man. The death of Captain Stacy.
Yeah,
the end of issue 89. It just shows him falling. Yeah. And also to put some of this in perspective for people who haven't read it, the issue before this, 169, Bullseye is knocked onto the train tracks, and Daredevil, kind of hesitates for a sec and then pulls him off. And throughout these issues, he's guilt-ridden with, did I just
He's responsible for every one of his actions after that, because he's the one that saved him.
Yeah, and this is very early in that mindset, mentality in doing comics, having characters really think of these things in those terms in such a gritty and convincing kind of way. So yeah, this really elevates, the whole medium, I think, at this point. By the way, thank you for cleaning up my second mess. I got the issues wrong on that. No, you're fine. No, thank you.
You can see why Frank Miller's Daredevil is considered essentially the Daredevil run to read. And this isn't even one of the stories they tell you that's necessary. And I'm telling you right now, it is necessary. This take is fantastic. This brings us into Daredevil 171. In the Kingpin's clutch is obviously The Kingpin is aware that his wife Vanessa has been abducted. He's returned to New York City, and Frank does a very wonderful job, normally within the first 2 pages, of catching you right up to where the story is from the last couple of issues. And we see that Bullseye, who's working for the other crime bosses, has he's not happy about this, Joe, but he's basically been set up to be the go-between to set up this trade of these files that Wilson Fisk has that are incriminating for these crime bosses for his wife Vanessa. And he's like, hey, I'm like one of the world's greatest assassins here. Why am I the stoolie here that's setting up a meeting?
Yeah, and again, just art-wise, right here, like look at that with the smoke there, and how it comes to the top of the page, and it's all just done very minimalistically, and it's, oh my God, it's so many people ape off of what Frank's doing here down the line. I mean, it's really like artists like Frank Miller, Bill Sienkiewicz, and stuff like that who are really pushing the medium in a certain way. You know, it's like you have that camp, and on the other side you get like your John Burns and your George Perez's. Like, it's such an interesting time artistically at the Big Two at this point.
So after this has all happened, he's going to set up the meeting, Breed, and we see Matt. Obviously, he's the lawyer. He knows what's going on. He's gotten the wind of it. He knows something's going on with the Kingpin. He decides he's going to go undercover as a hitman named Shades, which I think is a fantastic name for a hitman. He goes to Josie's bar. He mentions the name Vanessa. This is one of my favorite moments of all 3 issues. The entire bar stops. As soon as they hear that name, they're like, oh, no. You know, you shouldn't have said that. And then there's an enormous bar fight. Somebody goes through the front window. It might be Daredevil. I can't remember exactly. But he does get taken to Kingpin, so I guess it works out in the end. But this was a fantastic barroom brawl, and it's really good.
Yeah, now Josie's, like I said, it has the reputation for being the toughest bar in town. And one of the ways that he gets the meeting is, you know, he does the work. But he said he cleaned out Josie's on a Saturday night, and they're like, "Holy crap!" You know, that's huge, and that's how he gets the introduction. And I love the part where they're going through the sewage tunnels, and the guy goes, "What's up with this guy? He's blindfolded, and he's finding his way around easier than we are." And then also, it shouldn't be glossed over, the panels leading up to him actually coming face to face with the Kingpin, who he had never met, and he's talking about, you know, all of a sudden he goes, but then he closes with, "But no one ever told me just how big he is."
Yeah,
and yeah, that's because, you know, through his radar sense, basically just sees.
He can even hear his heartbeat. He's like, "What is this guy? An elephant?
Yeah, and
what is going on over here? What am I going to see on the other side?"
I love that. Yeah, I said, "You have 1 minute to persuade me not to have you shot. Use it, make use of it." And he lays out his pitch and doesn't impress, you know, Kingpin. So he goes, "Shoot him." And he goes, "Mind if I borrow your pen?" He goes, "Yeah, where you're going, you won't need it." And then right into the gun. I thought that's a great touch, and it's the look on Kingpin's face. I said, "Yep, you're hired."
Yep,
I love it.
He makes his impression, and in this moment, Joe, we see what the Bullseye has set up to set up this deal. I guess he's attacked one of Kingpin's cronies. He kind of stumbles in to set up this trade. It turns out he's been poisoned. He dies almost immediately after giving up the information. So the Kingpin and his guys are going to go out to do this trade. At the same time, we've got Matt essentially discovering Kingpin's vault, where all the files are. And we get an interesting encounter when this happens.
Yeah, but and as we're building that up, this is an early but one of the more effective uses, I think, that Frank's done of it's very reminiscent to what people are familiar with something like Dark Knight Returns, where, you know, when he's trying to open the vault, and it's panel after panel of how heavy it is. Like, but this is all coming from a deep understanding of how time works in comics. Like I was showing before with the issue before, where he jumps onto the taxi and then kicks right through it. That's just a 1-2. It's all done in one panel, even though we're supposed to be seeing multiple movements. Here, something that is taking a long time to do, he's breaking it up in different panels to show you the amount of time, and a lesser comics creator would have, maybe just, yada, yada, yada through it and just been like, maybe
wow, that took a while.
Yeah, exactly. But he understands how to pace something effectively and keep it, like he's following his own rules here. A lot of times in lesser comics, and with creators who aren't of the same caliber, you're not getting that level of care in the rules you're setting up for yourself. But here, it's just done so well, and I really wish more people would go back, check out these sort of things, and pick up on those tools of the trade when going forward with their own work.
If I can interject something real quick,
Mm-hmm.
that scene proved that Frank Miller had done his Marvel homework also, because longtime readers would have noticed that the Vault was not a Frank Miller idea. It was Stan Lee, because in Spider-Man 69, Spider-Man has to open the Vault, and he even struggles a little bit with it, and he has super strength because they set it up even as far back as that. There's no lock. It's just that Kingpin's the only one that can open it. And then we find out, he said Spider-Man struggled, and it took everything Daredevil had. So that was a really neat callback to anybody that had been reading for that long.
Absolutely.
And Kingpin thinks he's finding shades in there. It turns out he's finding Daredevil. He's switched out to his Daredevil costume. I guess the jig is up, Breed, and they have a fantastic fight. They're just going to it tooth and nail.
And you notice when he enters the Vault, he just flings the door open. So, I mean, Kingpin definitely has some kind of super strength that he developed over the years.
Yeah.
And they fight well.
It's not really a fight. This is
it's
great.
more of a, Daredevil's exhausted from having to get it. I mean, maybe if he hadn't expended so much energy opening the door, maybe if he let the Kingpin open it for him in the first place, he might have lasted longer. But yeah, it's basically he lets Daredevil tire out what's left of his, energy and just, whap. And then
this is my favorite. That's another one of my favorite parts. It's like any man that could withstand this, he must be almost done. And then the next panel, he's just getting punched into the wall.
Yeah,
because he hasn't even made a dent in Kingpin.
Not this time.
Yeah, that was a great one. Then we finally get the big drop at the end, Joe. This is fantastic. This definitely played out in the Daredevil series, or at least partially. Daredevil enters the drop site to trade for Vanessa, and he's got a plan. He's got this device that essentially, if anyone hears it, it renders them kind of incapable. It's like some high-pitched frequency. He's wearing an ear device, so everybody's been incapacitated, so he can go and save Vanessa. And as he's going there, somebody gets a hold of like a mortar and shoots it near her and blows her up, and destroys the drop site, Joe. Big things happening for Kingpin, as he has lost the love of his life.
Yeah, and these big, tall panels really emphasize all that. Like, what was it? Right when they're arriving at the site, you see how tall, like how much is going to end up coming down on the people below. So you have this whole setup. You have a lot of, these quicker panels leading up to it to show everyone in agony. You have multiple really tall panels showing the destruction, and it's topped on that page with a panel of the Kingpin looking up and seeing all the light from the explosion. Like, it's just done so expertly, and again, to show speed and to show how much time this is all taking, they break up the Kingpin's reaction by these thin panels that are increasing in size as Kingpin's eyes are opening to
realizes what's happened.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing. Again, if you put this in the hands of someone who's, just plugging away, doing their job, they wouldn't have made the panels different sizes. They would have just made them all the same size during that, because they're not thinking of panels in the terms of time passing and panel breaks being a passage of time.
Now, there is a part where we find out, if you're paying attention, you say that somebody shoots the mortar, that, he gives you a big clue who that's going to be. When he's leaving the car, he goes, Lynch, whatever you do, don't get out of the car, because he says he has a plan. He goes, but I haven't seen fit to tell you what it is. But he tells him just enough. He goes, stay in the car. Yeah, that will be important in a few minutes.
Absolutely. So at the very end of this, we get this kind of silly thing. I guess they're told to shoot Daredevil and kill him and get rid of him, but Turk's like, and I think it's Grotto are like, no, we're just going to shove him in the sewage system. That way he'll drown to death, which obviously is a ridiculous idea. So they tie him up, they throw him in there. That gets us into Daredevil 172 Gang War Breed. And of course, Daredevil, even if he's underwater, I guess he could, instead of using, well, he shouldn't be able to use radar because he's underwater. He should have to use sonar. But he's able to escape, and he gets out, and he's kind of ends up in the catacombs where there's a bunch of kind of a homeless people living underneath the city. He ends up back in Josie's bar once again as Turk is talking crap again. And this time, Daredevil's behind him again. So he decides he's going to jump through the window one more time. That's when we hear the Josie like, oh, not my window. And he stops him. And he brings him over, and he's like, you're going to tell me everything, and you work for me now. We started at the story out in the same place every time. I just like the way he did that, Bree.
Yeah. I said, and this is why Turk stood the test of time. He's just, the way he's written, I said, yeah, then, he keeps him going through the window this time, and I like when he goes, relax, Turk. I'm not angry. Okay, maybe a little angry.
Yeah, because he's basically just trying to drown him.
And then we get the recap for anybody that was dumb enough or couldn't find 171. We find out what went wrong with the whole Vanessa kidnapping, and so now Daredevil's brought up to speed, and we're getting into the part of the story where the Kingpin's ready to make his move and reestablish himself.
Yep, he's coming back as a crime lord, and his plan is just basically strike out all the major infrastructure of these other crime lords. It starts happening. They're killing drug deals and all these types of things, creating chaos in the city. We got Bullseye out hunting down, trying to hunt down the Kingpin, and obviously Turk tells Fisk after he's talked to Daredevil, Daredevil's after your files. Turns coat on Daredevil almost immediately. But it turns out, Daredevil is just setting him up, actually. Well, they're all setting each other up, Joe. It gets a little confusing.
Yeah, no, they're all like, all they want to do is, do this and take out, or rather they're trying to get their control, take over, but because of the events that happened with Kingpin and, having his own men basically get Kingpin back, it ruins the plans of these other criminals.
Yes.
And you get a great comedic moment with Bullseye where they build up with the fly that gets in the room, and he just takes out with a rubber band and goes, no charge for the fly. That's great.
He's got a lot of good things, and the whole time he's thinking, these guys are morons. First of all, I'm the world's greatest hitman. That's sitting me out as an errand boy. They can't do anything right. They're losing control of their entire city. And then we get this great moment where Fisk essentially walks in to the little meeting, and he's like, I'm taking over. You're wondering where all your people are. They've either joined me or I've murdered all of them. And they're sitting there like begging Bullseye. They're like, kill him now. We agreed to $15 million. and he pulls up his cigarette, and Bullseye lights it for the Kingpin, and it's clear that Bullseye has decided to join the Kingpin because he's seen that he's the winning side, and he's the only man that can control New York City. Great turn of events, and really shows how powerful a character like Kingpin is, where he just puts the cigarette up, Bullseye lights it up, even though he is one of the most dangerous villains in the entire universe.
Well, let's not forget before that, when they're brawling in the Kingpin's new digs there, Daredevil steals what he thinks are the files, takes them to the police,
set up.
And there's that line where he's, where the guys with the cops, newspapers, he goes, "What are you, blind?"
Yeah,
that's like this great touch that happens before the Kingpin gets there. Like I said, and there's that thing where he's one step ahead of the rest of these rubes because he sets up somewhere the building will collapse on him, and I said, while Daredevil, when Bullseye switches sides, there's a great scene while that's happening where the Kingpin explains to the last remaining mobsters why he's gonna have, when he goes, yes, he could choose to put a bullet in my brain, and he'd find that quite easy. But then he's got to think who's better prepared to give him continued employment. And basically, that in Bullseye, and just the expressions on Bullseye's face, like, yeah, good thing I got this lighter on me just in case he asks me to light his smoke. But and then he goes, "You want me to take these guys out, boss? I'll give you a group rate." And that's when the Kingpin drops the other shoe.
That was a great line.
No, we're going to need scapegoats. He goes, "Written confessions are being prepared, gentlemen. You will sign them." And as they're going off, it's like, but how do you? We had it all. How did it go wrong? And then it's time to deal with Lynch,
and that's
who for the past issue has been holding his head every time he speaks. And just when he goes, "You shouldn't have done it, Lynch. You shouldn't have killed Vanessa, killed my wife." And then he goes, and then just like I said that he tries to say he didn't. Then he realizes the jig's up. He takes out a gun. He shoots him. It has no effect. And we see the Kingpin beat him to death. And then something it kind of telling here, he goes, he turns Bullseye into an errand boy.
Like, I've got some garbage in there. I need you to
clean up and then get me a doctor. And,
I love that because again, it's subtle things. It's showing priorities. It's like, clean up my office. Like, I'm fine enough after getting shot that I can wait. You can take care of that. That felt very reminiscent to me of Chinatown at the end of that movie where the main antagonist gets shot, and he's also a big sort of guy, and it's the same kind of thing. Like, he's got a little bit of blood. He's got to hold it, but he's fine.
Well, a lot of people say somebody should tell Frank Miller that people do get affected by getting shot. That's one of the things over the years has kind of almost become a trope with him, that he'll have characters get shot, but they'll act like they're fine. This is one time where it's okay because it's well established. That isn't blubber. That is just rock hard. So if anybody can take getting shot in the chest like that and still be able to beat a man to death, it is the Kingpin.
He absolutely does beat him to death. He set up another meeting, and Daredevil gets wind of it. I can't remember exactly who he was talking to. I think he was talking to a prostitute. Finds out there's this big meeting. He goes to the building. We get those big vertical panels again, Joe, on the left side. He kills the power. And obviously they know what's going on. Bullseye is like, what? I know who this is. And Fist is like, he's in the generator room. You need to go get him. And they have this amazing fight, Joe. Like, they're going at it. And then the end of the fight is phenomenal. They're both essentially choking each other. And Bullseye's like, I am going to choke the life out of you. And Daredevil's like, but I'm going to take you with me. And they're both just choking each other until one of them passes out. And it turns out Bullseye passes out first. And you think Daredevil's won. But that's not what happens, Joe. That's why I love the ending of this.
Oh, yeah. No, it's phenomenal. It's just I'm going to give you this, and you have to go and take this to the police, and you're going to help me get the power back in this city because you're going to take out all my competition, and you're going to do it because what other choice do you have? Isn't that what's better for everyone? Is it, he really puts Daredevil in that bind of, well, you can clean up most of the city and then deal with me later, or you can do this petty little bit of revenge where I've shown you that I can knock you out. You could lose everything, or you can take care of most of what you want to take care of while helping me. It's just great.
You're going to get your files. You're going to take them down to the DA's office. You're going to take out all my competition. You can have Bullseye as a consolation prize. I don't need him anymore. And I'm going to go do what I'm going to do. And, hey, you can deal with me in a few months when I've rebuilt my empire.
Yeah.
Have a good day, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a part.
I was like, oh my God.
The line where he goes, where he's laying it all out, and he says, for a time, your side will be that much stronger. But before that, and this is something that I think in just like 3 pages here, Frank Miller sets up how it's going to be going forward. The fight with Bullseye, what we learned in that fight was that Daredevil is just as good with weapons as Bullseye. Because when Bullseye gets out the billy club and he starts using it, you go, you see why you like this so much. And then Daredevil picks up the gun and shoots it out of his hand and goes, I said no weapons, Bullseye. So he's basically the virtuous version of Bullseye because he can do all the same things that he can do. Mm-hmm. And when the fight ends and the Kingpin arrives and gives a speech and says, I'll throw in Bullseye as a courtesy, that lets you know that as formidable as Bullseye is, the Kingpin is the Daredevil villain going forward because he has the power to basically discard Bullseye. And when he needs him again, he knows that he'll be able to get him right back. So I thought that was, a great establishing the pecking order going forward in Frank Miller's world of Daredevil. Now, the end of the story, that is kind of the old.
There's a little epilogue at the end with another character returning.
Kind of the only part of the story I didn't like, not because they didn't bring her back, because that made sense, but when she uses the line "money for food," I got the impression when Daredevil washes out of the sewage system that those people had been there for a while.
Yeah.
How, she's already reduced to a mindless droid that only knows that one line. I thought that would have been better without the dialogue. But that's nitpicking on, like I said, one of my all-time top 10 stories. But just
sure. I'm a little torn on it because I get what they're going for. I get sort of like the poetry of it all.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I kind of give it some slack for that. But yeah, it could have been tweaked a little bit or done a little differently.
Honestly, just no dialogue would have made it more powerful. But I know why he did it. But that had been established in the same issue. Maybe if there had been more time, or if they introduced that a couple issues earlier. But again, if that's the only quibble I have with this story, I don't have a quibble with this story.
Not really. This thing was fantastic. It's a wonderful reintroduction of the character. You reestablish the pecking order. You've changed the status quo of the world that Daredevil's living in. And, he got a victory. He got Bullseye at the end, and he got the files that he wanted. But he had to make some concessions. And I like that. I like that the villain kind of comes out on top at the end. It shows what a formidable foe that he's going to be for the long term. That's long-term storytelling rather than the short-term payoff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I absolutely, this is like perfection. Joe, do you have any final words to talk about the return of Kingpin in Daredevil 170 through 172?
This is very similar to some of the other things we've talked about, just like the Teen Titans retrospective we did, where it's like, this is not the point that anyone talks about in this run, and it's phenomenal. Like that's how good this run is. This would be the best Daredevil story if you inserted it into just about any run on the book for anyone. Like that would be the highlight. Like if you threw this in like Bendis or Brubaker's or Zdarsky's run, like this story, that would be the peak of that run. And in here, it's almost forgettable, and that just shows how powerful this run is overall.
It also sets up the stakes and makes the other stories that are great that much more impactful when you finally get to them.
Yeah.
All right, Breen. So you have any final words before we wrap this bad boy up? This is a fantastic read. Hope everyone gets to find a copy of this.
I would say the only reason why this story isn't better remembered was it had the misfortune of coming out 2 issues after one of the most compelling characters created in the post Stan and Jack era had been created.
Yeah.
Yeah, Elektra was still sucking all the oxygen out of the comics room. Yeah. But as I said, personally, I think this is the highlight of his run because it is just, I mean, it is it's almost like it's a Scorsese movie waiting to happen.
Oh yeah.
Well, it just tells you Frank Miller, he's arrived as a writer, this introduces Elektra. 2 issues later, he brings back the Kingpin in a brand new way and completely reestablishes what the character is.
Yeah.
Where can they find this, Breen? If is this in collected editions, they got to go to the omnibus. They're gonna have to go find the singles.
The Frank Miller run has been reprinted
a lot.
Joe has something that I think I've got it on one of these old ancient, Daredevil Visionaries Frank Miller collection.
Yeah.
Joe has something different, and unlike some of the other issues in this run, you can actually find the individual issues for probably about $8 to $10 a piece.
Yeah,
which is great when you check out the sticker price of $168 or $159 or $181. So there's plenty of ways to get the story.
Absolutely. It'll be a wonderful addition to your collection if you like the floppies. If you want to have a library where you got the trades or omnibuses, you're going to want this. Joe, I imagine you got this in omnibus, right?
Yes, I do.
Tell me you've got a Frank Miller sketch in that bad boy because you met him once.
No, I don't, but I've talked to
Klaus
Frank.
Janson?
I've got Klaus signed by Dark Knight Returns and a few other things.
Nice.
But yeah.
So definitely go and get yourselves a copy. You will not be disappointed. Frank Miller's Daredevil run is absolutely one of the most outstanding comic runs in the history of the industry, and it's something that everyone should read at least once, right?
Nope.
Absolutely.
Yeah.